Upon the barren hellscape of Apokolips, there's one group of women, warriors, and gods. Female Furies. What's up, everybody? I'm Stan, and welcome to Detail Comics, where we go over comics in detail. This is an irate review, the show where I go over a comic book, its story, its art, give you my impressions, and let you know whether it's something you need to go back to the comic book shop for or not. Make sure you subscribe to get more of these every single week. The book I want to talk about from DC Comics is Female Furies #1. So Big Barda and my love of Big Barda really just got rekindled with the Mr. Miracle series and how her relationship with Scott Free has really taken place. And with Mitch Gerads' art on the cover of Female Furies #1, it's hard not to associate it with that particular series. But this is going to be a completely different vibe and focus completely on the Female Furies, the warrior goddesses of granny goodness. So let's see exactly what's going to go down when these women start kicking ass on Apokolips. So let's just rip the band-aid off this one. Female Furies is a comic book which seems to be more satirical and poking at issues that really happen to women inside the workplace. It's about sexism, it's about oppression, it's about inequality, it's about sexual harassment, it's about all these things. And it's wrapped up in Jack Kirby's New Gods with a real strong take on the classic art style. Everything appears to be set back in the early days of the Fourth World and nothing close to modern-day New Gods lore. So we get a look back at a bunch of different things. We have Granny Goodness attempting to slay Hegra in order to win the favor of Darkseid, only to have Desaad throw her some sort of poison and then claim the death of Hegra himself, so that way she no longer gets any kind of credit. We see her pushing the Female Furies to be their best, to be an unequaled, elite fighting team, the most ferocious warriors on the surface of Apokolips or within its hellish depths. But that fact doesn't seem to resonate with any of the other members of the New Gods, which all appear to be men. This boys' club isn't presenting them with the kind of respect that they deserve, but what really kind of gets me is how absolutely on the nose this commentary is. It seems like the members of Darkseid's kind of cabal are deliberately telling Granny Goodness not the right times for their meeting place, so that way she's always late. She's trying to fight for their kind of equality. When we look back at the past, we see what might be Darkseid forcing himself on Granny Goodness, and at the threat of a loss of stature, she gives in, and then ultimately leading everybody to believe that she isn't necessarily worthy of the kind of position and the kind of power that she's been given by Darkseid. This is supposed to be some sort of representation of the modern workplace, or the modern threats, or the modern lifestyle of women inside their places of work, their places of business, anywhere that they're really at, and the troubles that they have to face. And then ultimately, when promised power by Darkseid, she ends up being in charge of the orphanage, which is deemed women's work. It's really kind of like uneasy and infuriating and frustrating. I mean, this is a very overt presentation of these kinds of concepts inside a modern mainstream comic book. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, it's just that some people are going to look at this and be like, oh my god, because they don't appreciate the subject matter. They don't want to read a comic book about the oppression of women and their inequality inside the workplace and have it represented by these villainous entities of the New Gods, people that aren't necessarily heroes. These are bad people that are doing these things, and it's just a different side of their dark nature. And then we also see what can be considered scenes of sexual harassment, an unfair set of standards being placed upon the women, which has these absurd scenes. They're in a bake-off, they're wearing evening gowns, there's a fucking smile contest. I mean, you have to be like, this is hitting you over the head with a brick, absolutely how absurd this is. These women are meant to be the fiercest warriors in all of Apokolips, and they're in a fucking beauty contest. And it's just one of those things where it feels infuriating just how this has to be put into print. Some people are going to feel uneasy, particularly in some of the scenes where Orly is being accosted by Willick, and unfortunately when they go to rescue this girl and the bastard of Steppenwolf comes to claim her, saying, if you give me a kiss, your torture will be less severe, resulting in Orly just absolutely slashing him across the throat and leaving him to die, bringing Big Barda into some sort of pact where they go to bury this guy on a comet. It's hard to put into words what I'm really seeing, because I can't necessarily associate with this from the side of a woman. I can't see this as some sort of empowering storyline telling me the truths of what I experience in my day-to-day life. So for me, the context is kind of off. I can see how this is poignant. I can see how it matters inside mainstream society. I'm just wondering who is going to be reading it, and I can only imagine what kind of reaction it's going to get from people that don't necessarily appreciate this kind of content, or just the politicizing of their comic books, even though comics have been political since the beginning. I would actually say that the art is very good, and it actually represents the characters from Jack Kirby's original Fourth World very well, especially in some of these very throwback issues with very flat coloring, where Hi-Fi does a very good job creating this kind of classic setup for these individual characters. But as far as the story, make no mistake, this is going to be a story of female empowerment, and it's going to bring to light all these things that women have faced in the workplace that have been going on. They've been being spread out inside the public consciousness and being brought to light. You know, your Harvey Weinsteins and all that kind of stuff. So this is going to be a very poignant and focused look at those rather undesirable parts of society. But I want to know what you guys think about Female Furies #1 and whether you're going to be following along with the whole series. Is it something that you're excited to read? So hit me up in the comments down below and we can start that conversation. As always, if you like what you see, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to get more news, reviews, and commentary on comic books, comic book movies, comic book TV shows and games, and anything and everything inside the world of comics.